security. What rights do they have if a company finds itself in the midst of a reporting scandal? Well, Jenice Malecki is a New York-based securities attorney, and she joins us now to talk about shareholders' rights. Thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
When we got this double whammy of news yesterday, what was your initial response?
Well, my initial response was that the class action attorneys are obviously looking into these companies and looking in to see whether or not the accounting firms have, let's say, cooked the books of some of these companies in order to boost earnings without true revenue.
Now, given that you paint the picture of the attorneys circling, hoping for fees and prey, how long does the process take if there were to be a class action lawsuit?
Well, typically, class action attorneys move very quickly. There's a race to the courthouse for the first one to get there to become a lead counsel in the case. But that's not really shareholders' only right. Shareholders have a right to opt out of a class action and to pursue their own action.
Wouldn't that be extraordinarily expensive and difficult?
Yes, it would be. And only the larger investors, maybe some mutual funds, perhaps a larger investor who's put $5 million into the company may want to bring their own action, because a lot of times with the class action litigation, you're only going to get between 8 and 15 cents on the dollar. Class action firms do talk about 25 to 50% on the dollar, but I think that's more the rare case for a recovery for an average investor. So, of course, the smallest investors will be hurt the most when there is an accounting violation.
So, focusing for a moment on those people who don't have $5 million in a particular company that finds itself in a troubled or dubious situation, what defenses do they have?
Well, I mean, it's very difficult for the small investor to avoid something like this. The best defense would be really to have a very diverse portfolio that has securities from all different disciplines contained within it, so that all your eggs are not in one basket. If you're too heavy on one company and some news like this comes out, your portfolio could really be devastated, and your chances for a substantial recovery are actually pretty small. While you can get recovery through the class action mechanism, and the class action mechanism is a good police of these sort of violations, it also can become a cost-benefit, and there can be a cost-benefit analysis to figure out how much will a settlement cost me and how much can I earn in overstating my income this year. But
that's, to be fair, that really isn't a defense, isn't it? Simply by saying if you're invested in a large enough, if you're invested in a large enough number of companies, it doesn't matter if you lose everything on one company. That's not really a defense in terms of actually finding out what is going on in terms of the accounting practice of a firm. What do you do?
Right. Well, you have to look at their annual, their quarterly reporting. But the problem is when there's an accounting violation, it goes to the basic fundamentals of the company, things that you really need to rely on. And that's why it's one of the most dangerous things, and that's why accounting firms who assist in this type of behavior really need to be dealt with swiftly and harshly by regulators and the community, because the financial reporting is one of the absolute key things that an investor needs to rely on, because a lot of the accounting practices and what's going on there is also, part of what their press releases are about.
Which raises the question, do you believe that the regulators are sufficiently tough and strict at the moment?
Well, the regulators are tough and strict, but there is so much activity going on, and you have to wonder about staffing and whether or not they can afford to take each company to the fullest extent, or they have to settle. Settlements, both in the class action scenario and the regulatory scenario, can compromise the security of the marketplace. If we're not tough enough, the preeminence of the United States markets could be in jeopardy. So it's very important that these things be dealt with swiftly and sharply.
Great stuff. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Jenice Malecki, our guest.